How could you say Ratatouille is a bad cooking movie? Watch Mojo said Remy's the #2 greatest TV and movie chef behind only Babette. Are you saying I am not to trust Watch Mojo on such matters? Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. And also this light accordion jazz, not the right mood for this. This is angry time. We need angry music. Yeah, that's better. Ratatouille tries to lure you into a world of whimsy and make-believe by making a rodent the protagonist. But that suspension of disbelief disappears as soon as he starts cooking, because Remy's culinary skills are that of pure fiction. In 2007's Disney Pixar animated film Ratatouille is held in high esteem amongst both film enjoyers and people in the culinary industry. The late great Anthony Bourdain went so far as to call it the greatest culinary film ever made. Highly touted as a movie about following your dreams no matter how much the odds are stacked against you just because you happen to be rat-shaped. Which, let's be honest, terrible lesson. Do you want to eat in a restaurant that has a rat in it? Do you want to eat in a restaurant with an army of rats in it? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, cool, I don't know, I can't really stop you from doing that. This is a film that's kind of at odds with itself. On one hand, the depiction of the kitchen life is very accurate. It's a misfit brigade akin to a pirate ship that relies on spot-on efficiency to operate properly. But then on the other hand, it doesn't really understand how cooking works. Let's start with the first time this reality begins to fall apart, which is making soup. The first time that Remy shows off his culinary ability at Gusteau's is when he fixes the soup that Linguini knocks on the floor. A scene that glosses over what an absolute beast Linguini is, picking up that pot with his bare hands with the quickness. That is not a light pot, even with half his contents now on the floor. Half of its red contents. Keep that in mind. It's hard to make an exact assumption of what kind of soup this is, but an educated guess would be like a tomato soup or a bisque. Once the pot is back on the burner, Linguini attempts to fix the situation by topping it up with water and ingredients. Starting with what appears to be diced onions, then entire green onions, and then a healthy amount of salt and olive oil. And all this makes our little rat friend just freak the f*** out. So much so that he feels the need to get involved and fix it himself. Linguini also hates what he's done here because as soon as he tastes it, he just spits it right out the window. Looking at these ingredients, what he probably did was either add too much raw onion, too much salt, or some floor spice got in when he scooped it off the ground. With the onion, it will mellow and cook out over time, and while it's not ideal throwing in raw onion at this stage of the soup making, it's still salvageable. Too much salt is a little trickier to fix, but not impossible. Add in a little tomato, some acidity, maybe some spice, and that will help balance things out. The floor spice issue though? Yeah, you should just go ahead and throw that out. Luckily, our star rodent is a culinary savant and knows exactly how to fix the situation by smell alone, no less. And to do so, what he does is add in 6 bay leaves, a rat's fistful of black pepper, which is probably about a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm going to go ahead and say another rat's fistful of minced garlic. It's flaky and small, so it might be sea salt, but garlic seems to be the better option since he's adding in ingredients that you would generally find on a sauté station. And then at this point, he decides it's a good idea to finally wash his hands for the first time after leaving the sewer. Right over the soup. There's a good reason rats shouldn't be in the kitchen. Now that he's all cleaned up, he dumps in half a deep 6 of stock, which is roughly 1 liter's worth, some portion of a 473 milliliter carton of cream, 4 pieces of poorly julienne leek, and just the green parts by the way, which are usually used in a stock rather than the final soup. 1 small sprig of thyme, 4 whole cloves of garlic, another 1/4 teaspoon of salt, parsley leaves, a mystery diced vegetable, for which I'm gonna guess, I don't know, turnip. It's out of water and it looks uncooked, so it's probably not a potato. It could be parsnip, radish, daikon, etc., but like white root vegetable is a safe bet here. And finally, a wooden spoonful of herbs. This is a classic French kitchen, so I'm going to go ahead and say that these are fiend herbs, a quartet comprised of equal parts of parsley, tarragon, chervil, and chives. All very tasty things that make the soup look drastically different from where it started. Remember the color from earlier? Well, it's not that anymore. Once a smooth red soup, now it's white and chunky. I don't know who in this kitchen is in charge of making the soup, but if I came back and my soup was that different from where it started, I would have some questions. This is a kitchen that has already begun dinner service, And we know that because prior to this, we can hear orders being called out.
I need 2 salmon, 3 salad composite, and a 3 filet.
So Remy has to act fast, and when he is caught, he's still adding ingredients in here. If we go by runtime alone, from the moment he began fixing the soup to when he was caught, only a minute 14 had passed. This is a large stock pot of soup, somewhere between 20 to 40 liters, with my guess being probably closer to the 40 mark. A minute 14 is not going to do anything good for the flavor. If anything, he made the situation significantly worse by throwing all this in there. The raw garlic he threw in there floats right to the top, so there's a very good chance that someone's getting a clove in their bowl of soup. There's a chance that they might get 4 cloves of garlic in their soup. Bad day for that person. Not to mention, for any of the other flavors to flavor the soup, it's going to take some time. Half an hour at least. Maybe no one noticed a rat running around this pot of soup for that long, which, yeah, that's actually kind of possible. Except, Linguini was right there cleaning up his mess. Like, sure, at this point it's kind of established that he's not good at things, but it doesn't take that long to mop up an entire kitchen, let alone one spot, even if that one spot has a bunch of soup all over it. So if it was so disgustingly bad moments ago, now, with all this work put in, it'll taste like a very nice compost bin. Yum yum. That's not a good look, especially back in that day when making soup was kitchening 101. Bonsoir! So you want to get into the world of fine cuisine? Well, as I always say, cooking can be done by all. But to excel, it takes patience and understanding of how to make the most of your ingredients. For example, say you have done your vegetable prep for the day and you're left with just the scraps. Instead of throwing them into the compost, use them to make a broth. And then take that broth, add in some spaghetti, chicken from a special that did not sell, and some herbs, and you have yourself a soup. The knowledge of how to turn the leftovers into a soup du jour and a desire to learn will grant you access to any kitchen in the world. Skinner isn't really running a kitchen that improvises too much, instead choosing to stick to established recipes. The additional linguini kinda shifts his mentality a little bit, but he still goes to things that they've done before, even if those things don't make sense to break out at the last minute, like when Skinner asked Linguini to make Sweetbreads Ala Gusteau. Chefing time, so I'm in the kitchen with my jacket on now. The recipe that Skinner chooses for linguini is something called Sweetbreads Ala Gusteau, described by him and one of his cooks as a disaster, which tracks since most people don't know what sweetbreads are, and once they find out it's a thalamus gland of a lamb or veal, they aren't super interested in it. Which is disappointing because it is fairly mild in flavor and part of the classic French repertoire. Although, I've only worked with sweetbreads one time outside of culinary school. And what we did was turn it into a sausage, so we really didn't highlight the thalaminess of it. Being an unpopular ingredient means that they probably don't have it in-house, except they do, because prior to starting, Tattoo asked if there was any veal stomach soaking.
Lalo, we have some veal stomach soaking, yes?
And while sweetbreads aren't technically the stomach, they are sometimes the pancreas gland, and that's in like the stomach region, so I don't know, that's basically stomach. I don't really know what they'd be doing with it. Maybe there's a second better sweetbread dish on the menu, or it's a less prominent feature on something. Maybe like steak topped with some sweetbreads. That'd probably be pretty tasty. But it is a good thing that they are on hand for these two, because step 1 is removing the outer membrane, and then step 2 is soaking them in milk overnight. Another old school technique that removes some of the awfuliness, leaving you with just a mild organ flavor. A technique that also works well with liver and garlic. The recipe for Sweetbreads Ala Gusteau that we get from the movie is as follows. It is cooked in a salt and seaweed crust, served with cuttlefish tentacle, dog rose puree, gooey duck egg, dried white fungus, finished with an anchovy licorice sauce. I think in their situation, it is safe to assume that most of these things have not been prepped yet. And also, some wildly specific ingredients at play here. A gooey duck egg? The egg of the most phallic looking clam that is only found on the Pacific Northwest coast of North America? A clam that lays its eggs through a process called broadcast spawning, where it just sprays its eggs everywhere? You want some of those for this dish? Unless you were saying gooey duck egg, which makes more sense. Enough talking about Sweetbreads Ala Gusteau, I think it's time we prepare them, and for that we're going to need some ingredients. Flawless transition. Before me, we have everything we need to make sweetbreads a la Gusteau, or close approximations of things that we need. I'm not hunting down a specific rose that's only found in Europe to make a puree. A puree that I'm pretty sure is only flavored with rose, because a pure rose puree would be pretty strong. Not ideal. So instead, I'm going to season my puree with rose water. I'm also going to swap out the cuttlefish for shrimp because that's easier to obtain. And the duck eggs are just going to be chicken eggs because I know how ducks make their eggs. It's not okay. And also I went ahead and made some seaweed salt ahead of time just by combining salt and seaweed in a food processor. Just blitz it up until it's all one similar consistency. And here we have the sweetbreads that have been soaking in milk for the past 24 hours. Ready to go. Probably barely tastes like organ now. So let's start making this so we can see how long it takes and what it tastes like in the end. And as I'm making all this, I'll tell you what I'm up to through the magic of voiceover. Alright, let's start cooking. Bow. First thing we're doing is getting the white fungus rehydrated. I'm just using water, but stock probably would have been a nicer option here because the fungus is quite mild in flavor. That'll go on a burner and we'll just cook it until it's soft. Next we'll get the licorice sauce going by melting down some licorice candies with Worcestershire sauce. I'm using this instead of full anchovies because one of the main ingredients in Worcestershire sauce is anchovies, and this will save us some trouble in seasoning the sauce later. Add in a little water to help the candies melt, and then that can work in the background on medium-low heat. For the sweetbreads themselves, I dried them off, which was a terrible mistake. The milk mixed with the seaweed salt would have helped form a better crust around the sweetbreads and instead ended up being a little bit soft. Whoopsie. Into the oven it goes at 350 degrees. Do a quick check on the sauce and the white fungus, and the fungus is ready to go. Quick little chop on that to help it blend and remove the core. Starting with just a little splash of rose water because this stuff can be quite strong, and then blend. On first blend it's a little thick and not quite as creamy as it should be. An easy way to make it creamier is by adding cream, but I don't have any at this moment. So instead we'll use a combo of milk and butter. Now it's looking quite puree-esque. Give it a taste, adjust the thickness and the seasoning before cleaning the blender with soapy water. To make the prawns extra fancy, we'll be skewering them so they maintain a long shape when cooking instead of curling up. Then we'll put those aside to be cooked right before plating. A temperature check on the sweetbreads shows that they're fully cooked at 70 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, the licorice isn't melting as I hoped it would, so that's going to get blent up as well. Good time to remember to clean as we go. And then back on the heat to stay warm. Nearing the end here, the prawns are going in the pan. We'll separate a couple eggs for the egg yolks and then cook them ever so gently until they just start to thicken up. Finish off the prawns, dust off the sweetbreads, and now it's plating time. Obviously we're going to be fancy with this, so the puree is going to form a nice little circle in the middle. The yolk will be a circle of streaks around that, odd number of course. De-skewer and place the prawns onto the yolk. That one doesn't seem to want to stay up, but it will stay up. There's no debate on that, it's staying up. Sweetbreads on the puree, a drizzle of the anchovy sauce. And it's kind of lacking color, so we'll do a few dill fronds on the prawns. A dusting of the seaweed salt, and there you have it. Sweetbreads a la Gusteau. So this dish actually took this amount of time, which honestly, not that bad, much less time than I thought it would take. So this is Gusteau's version, but we would be Remy miss if we didn't do the wrap version too. The only modification of this dish I can see on screen is the sauce. So instead of doing anchovy licorice, we'll instead do orange cranberry truffle, because those are the things he grabbed. He also threw in some mystery spices in there, so we're going to do the same. Complementary spices would be star anise, fennel, cinnamon. Think mulled wine and you're on the right path. So since we started with a licorice sauce, we'll keep the fennel and make a gastrique with the other ingredients. What's a gastrique, you ask?
Not quite a vinaigrette, not quite a syrup. A gastrique delicately toes the line of sweetness and acidity. An excellent complement to any dish and accessory to the other sauces. It can be made with a wide range of ingredients. A champagne lemon gastrique made with champagne vinegar, sugar, and lemon juice is a wonderful addition avec un plat de poisson. Fruit is an excellent choice to make a gastrique with, such as blueberry or venison. There are no wrong answers, only moments of learning. Follow your heart and see what creations you come up with.
Now it's time to ask, for the bougiest thing I've ever tried, hey, is this a bad snack? These are appetizers, so basically snacks, so the title stands. Let's start with Gusteau here. We're going straight for the bread. And try to get a little bit of everything. Got the yolk, got the sauce. That is not great. I think they were right to call it a disaster. But the white fungus puree doesn't have a lot of flavor. It's kind of just a vessel for the rose. The anchovy liquor sauce, man, I don't know what's going on with that. Let's try it with a prawn. As a surf and turf, it's a little better. The salt bake seasoned up the sweetbreads really nicely. I do like the creaminess of the yolk. You know, maybe it's not enough sauce on here. Let's just drizzle it on there. Honestly, I think my addition of dill really helped this out. Without it, it's pretty clunky. If someone made this on Chopped, I don't think they would make it to the next round. Let's try the Remy version. And I'm not gonna lie, I do think this one's gonna be better. But that orange complements this far better. The orange combines nicely with the rose, which combines nicely with the yolk. Damn, I really want to say more bad things about Remy, but he was on the right path here. White truffle, orange, damn. Even gives the white fungus more life on this side. Over here, it's kind of just there. Over here, interacts with it nicely, gives it more depth. Definitely took a while to make all of this, but it's nowhere near the amount of time it would take to make a Ratatouille. This right here is the most flagrant part of the entire film. What it's all been building up to, the climax where Remy and his rat family make the titular Ratatouille. A ratatouille so good that within the cold-hearted Anton Ego, it awakens positive memories of his childhood. What a magical sense of all things cuisine Remy must have to not only make a ratatouille that good, but to make it in the amount of time that a food critic would wait for their food. Do you think a ratatouille just happens? No. This is a very time-consuming and prep-heavy dish. But aside from the cooking, this is what happens from the moment that Anton Ego sits down at his table and when he finally takes his first bite. The kitchen does a rallying speech poorly pepping up the brigade, followed by a less rallying speech about how despite all their rage, the head chef's just a rat in a hat. Everyone walks out, Linguini becomes a waiter, all the rats go through the dishwasher, which, by the way, would kill them so fast, and then still run for 2 more minutes to complete the cycle. And then you times that by all the rats who don't know what seasoning is because they've been happily eating garbage this entire time. The health inspector is kidnapped, and then finally, Remy begins working on his ratatouille from scratch after tossing out the ratatouille that tattoo started from scratch. And they do everything. They make the tomato sauce, they cut the veg, they layer the veg, they cook the veg, and then finally they plate it up before it goes out. Man's been sitting out there for a while at this point. Like, what even is the etiquette if you're a food critic here? Hello, I'm etiquette expert Charles Xavier, spelled with Z. Today we'll be covering the proper rule of manner when constructing a crushing critique at your favorite eatery. Let us commence. Etiquette with Charles. Now you might be under the assumption that your evaluation of an establishment only begins when the food is placed in front of you. To which I would retort, it appears that you're under the consumption. No, a proper reviewer begins judging immediately. Was your host happy to see you? Is your tablecloth absolutely rife with wrinkles? Or worst of all, did you order sparkling water only to receive still? Parry the thought. All of this judgment should be noted in a detailed yet fair manner. After all, no one enjoys being in the company of a constant poo-pooer. An example of fair criticism is that your table is set up for a main course, yet woefully absent of any cutlery required for a soup or a salad. An example of unfair criticism is that the nephew of the Earl of Barthashire is a waiter at this restaurant, and you still hold a grudge upon him in all of his name for an illegal toss made at the North-Northeast Windermere Bocce Ball Invitational. A deed made far more egregious by the referee's cavalier attitude stating, "Chill out, man, we're just playing for a 15-pound Tesco gift card." Oh, how his voice keeps me up at night. Anywho, an appropriate amount of time to wait for a course will depend on the establishment and the type of dining you're engaging in. 5 to 10 minutes after placing your order is reasonable under most circumstances, barring any comments to the contrary. such as the entire kitchen team resigning and being replaced by an army of rats. In this situation, all established codes of conduct may be thrown out, and it's entirely up to you how long you choose to wait. Now, if you excuse me, I have a waiter to berate about their unsportsmanlike conduct at a local tournament 3 years ago. Kendall Jenner Balthashire, I have words for you! Since this is the part of the movie I have always taken umbrage with, and some people know exactly how much umbrage due to how vocal I've been every time this movie gets brought up, it is time to determine, once and for all, how long it takes to make a ratatouille. I have the ingredients in front of me, the oven is hot, and the timer has started. So let's make a ratatouille. The sauce here is going to take the most amount of time before going into the oven, so let's dice an onion. Here's the chefy way of doing that quickly. You want the root facing away from you, slice 90% of the way in, turn it, same thing downwards. One more cut, diced onion. Now go into our pan along with salt, rosemary, basil, red wine, and tomato puree. If you're feeling especially frisky while making this tomato sauce, feel free to throw in a bay leaf. Now for the part that makes this dish oh so picturesque, slicing the vegetables. We're doing zucchini, eggplant, and tomato here. A mandolin will be the quickest way to get even slices. And when that's done, the sauce should be ready as well, so we can begin layering our veg. Alternate between all three until we have a slightly raised circle. Let's just slide that back into place. Top it with tin foil and into the oven it goes.
Le ratatouille, a classic dish of humble Provençal peasants. A combination of local vegetables and herbs stewed slowly with love. A fairly modern creation only entering recipe books since the 1930s. Yet, there are so many ways to prepare it. Some choose to cook all the ingredients at once, allowing their flavors to harmonize as one, whereas others cook them separately, giving them space to shine in their own way. However you choose to prepare your own, just remember one thing. Give it the time it needs to find itself.
That's how you make a ratatouille, and all it took was this amount of time, which I'm sure Mr. Ego had no problem waiting. Just sitting there, sipping his little soup. But in reality, you know he was just coming up with scathing one-liners to describe Gusteau's. Perhaps say, on this very special evening, the entire restaurant was blessed with the ability to be their own waiter, waiting over an hour for the appetizer, then another hour for the entree. Anton clearly has some restaurant experience, because he knows how to dish and serve. Like a real sassy bitch. So yeah, not happening. This entire film, just lies upon lies upon lies. And I gotta say, Mr. Patton Oswalt, that's not very 1% of you. In conclusion, actually there's one more thing we gotta cover. Okay, so the movie isn't all bad. Sure, there's glaringly obvious problems with the cooking, but all in all, it is a pretty enjoyable film. There is a real attempt in showing how things are set up in a kitchen. There's prep being done and sorted out the way it would be on an actual station. There's even care for the smaller details, like slight burn marks on people's arms, as Anthony Bourdain pointed out. And burn marks are something that everyone has. Mine have mostly healed up, but you can kind of see a couple right here. And for a while, I had a real dumb one just across the bicep, which I got from turning a sheet pan too quickly. Here's a little insight on working in the industry for a while. After some time, your injuries just become dumber and dumber. Like you'll cut yourself on a can opener or a cardboard box gets you the wrong way. And then everyone just points and laughs, as they should. Gusteau is an excellent depiction of a chef as well, because he cares and wants you to do well, but at the same time, is just a little bit condescending.
What can I do? I am a figment of your imagination.
Tattoo does a great speech about how cooking in a kitchen is vastly different than cooking at home. You can't just go at your own pace in a professional kitchen. There's only one pace in a kitchen, and if you're not maintaining it, you will hear about it very quickly. And at this point, you might be thinking, wow, What an emotional journey we've been on. He went from despising the rat to loving the rat, just like in the movie. I guess even the harshest of haters can feel love when watching a Disney movie. Except, I'm just going right back to hating, because Remy is a jerk. He is a pretentious asshole. Not to mention, this movie makes it very clear that rats are vermin. Tattoo, who's mostly on board with this, nearly vomits at the sight of him. As any normal person would. The restaurant even gets shut down because of this. That's the second last thing that happens in this movie. It seems kind of unlikely that even in this fictitious universe that a rat is gonna get a business license for an eatery. And then you gotta find a team of cooks that are cool with a rat chef? I personally would burn the place down if I walked into that. Other people would probably be okay with this situation. I do think I know a few people who would happily work for a rat chef. Maybe not as strong of a point as I thought, but the bigger question is, why would a rat even want this? The average wild rat lives for 2 years. 6 if it's well taken care of. And if you've ever worked in a kitchen, you know that stress is gonna get him in under 1. When he's just in his office all day doing food costs, you didn't think of that, did you, Remy? That'd all just be slapping ingredients together, having a good old time? Isn't that what you thought working in a kitchen would be like, Remy? Because it's not, Remy. There's a lot at stake here, Remy. You're a business rat now. You got people to take care of. And if you don't, they're coming after you, Remy. I'm not just talking about the cooks, Remy. I'm talking about the collectors too, Remy. Remy, you don't know what you've been off here. You could have just been in the wilderness, Remy. Just munching on garbage. But that's not what you wanted, is it, Remy? That was not good enough for you, Remy. Remy, you want to be in business. Not just any business, Remy, but the food business, Remy. When those debts start piling up, Remy, that's when the collectors are coming. And let me tell you, Remy, not a lot of rat-run businesses in this town. They're going to find you real quick, Remy. Let me tell you a word or two of truth here, Remy. Because this ain't going to end like a Disney movie, Remy. Because, Remy, it's lights out. This going to say the end, because it's going to be the end of you. Anyways, that's the end of the video here. If you enjoyed it, like button, subscribe. Maybe share this with a friend of yours who thought Disney peaked in the 2000s and then just dashed their rose-tinted nostalgia. Alright, bye now. This is the Sweetbreads Ala Gusteau. This is the Remy version. You instantly don't like the flavor of that, do you?
What is that?
It's the thalamus gland of a veal.